To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government statements and actions?
The Honourable David
Mr. Speaker, yes, absolutely, and particularly this government's very careful use of its own finances. We inherited conditions where government spending had increased very rapidly, leading to high inflation and high interest rates that were hurting Kiwis and their businesses, their farms, their firms and their families. We have set a very conservative operating allowance, forcing ministers to do more with less each year, just as families and households have had to do over the last few years. As a result of the government being careful with its finances, we are able to see declining inflation, declining interest rates and an economic recovery for the benefit of all New Zealand.
No, sorry, you can't make a statement like that. Just calm it down.
Supplementary question. Does he stand by his claim 6 months ago that unemployment had peaked, given that it's still rising, with as many people now out of work as the entire population of Tauranga?
Mr. Speaker, I do stand by that statement because clearly unemployment has moved very little since that time. It is peaking and will decline in good time. As the Minister of Finance has recently said, one of the last things to be fixed when you have to do an economic repair job is unemployment. First comes the government spending blowout, thanks Labor, then comes the inflation, then comes the interest rates, and this government, just as the Labor government knocked each of those dominoes down, is putting them up in sequence, but there are no shortcuts.
Supplementary question. If the unemployment rate was unacceptable, as he said in September 2023, and is it now more unacceptable given 37,000 more people have lost their jobs since then? Or does he apply one set of standards for the previous government and a different set of standards to his own?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, we have always treated unemployment as a percentage figure. It is currently 5.3%. That is around 165,000 people. What's interesting is that in late 2023, the time of the statement the member referred to, the Treasury was forecasting on Labor Party policy settings that unemployment would be 165,000 people. So if you want to play these kinds of games, then you could say that under this government, 5,000 fewer people have lost their jobs than they would have with those guys' mismanagement.
Well, I certainly don't want to play games with any figures at all. The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the pre-election fiscal update is tracking according to plan, what happened to the 2% economic growth that the Treasury were forecasting before the election, which has actually turned under his leadership into a shrink of the economy?
Mr. Speaker, the member is right to point out the difference in economic growth, but the other way you could look at it is that under this government, in spite of softer economic conditions which have multiple unexpected causes, the facts are that more people have kept their job than otherwise expected. And for New Zealanders anxious about losing their job, for New Zealanders trying to put food on the table and pay their bills, a government that is good for employment is good for Kiwi families.
Does he regard rising unemployment as being a sign of a government that's good for employment?
That's right. Mr. Speaker, well, the member's really got to decide. The forecasts when the people kicked him out, quite rightly in my view, were that unemployment would continue to rise. In actual fact, it's risen less than it was forecast when he went out of government, deposed by the people of this country.
Supplementary question. Does he see any link between the fact that 1 in 7 young New Zealanders are now unemployed under his leadership and the fact that 200 New Zealanders every day are giving up and permanently leaving the country?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, as I was saying on behalf of another minister yesterday, I think sometimes the opposition fails to give due credit to the intelligence and perspective that New Zealanders have. As a wiser man once said, maybe they measure the minds of others by their own. But the fact is that New Zealanders understand that the economic conditions we face today are a product of at least three things. The conditions set by historic policy decisions, including those of the now opposition, the previous government. International factors, such as the world's largest economy effectively deciding to renegotiate its deal with the rest of the world economically, and also the policies of the current government. When they look at the third factor, the policies of the current government, they see a government that spends carefully, that cuts red tape and regulation, that tries to push people up instead of pulling them down, as we saw so often from the opposition. And that is why this government is in control, because people can see the things we're doing are making their future brighter.
Well, does he stand by his claim that for unemployed people who, quote, don't play ball, the free ride is over? If so, how many of the 37,000 extra people who have joined the unemployment queue, who had jobs before he became Prime Minister, does he regard as not playing ball?
Mr. Speaker, in answer to the first leg of the question, yes, absolutely. This government doesn't believe that welfare is a lifestyle choice. We believe that if you can work, you should work. We believe that you have obligations to look for work, just as the people who get up every morning and go to work to pay the taxes have to fulfil their obligation to pay the tax to fund your welfare. That is absolutely what this government believes in, mutual obligation. And there's something else about it, is that we believe that people who don't have a job right now have value and do have the capability to get one. We don't consign them to the scrap heap with the soft bigotry of low expectations like those guys did.